please start the meeting and we'll open the meeting.
Okay.
Want to start? Okay, welcome everyone. This is the building committee for the Academy Community Center. We have a small group here today. I'd like to maybe go around the room and introduce.
Ann Kelly?
Board member, Academy
Committee.
board member. Joe Ballantyne, chair.
John Colfus, Colliers Project Leader.
Tom Arcari with QA&M Architecture.
Mark Skalenka, Colliers Project Leaders.
And interested from the public or the town.
Scott Cochran, Director of Youth and Family.
Bill Stableford, Advisory Committee.
Mid County Town Resident. Okay. Oh, that's right, the people. I'm terrible at that, aren't I? On the line, please.
Joan Walker, member.
Anyone else on the team?
Al's on.
Al Goldberg, your liaison from the Board of Selectmen.
That it?
No. John's on.
John, speak up, John.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. John Lamorandi, committee member.
Thank you, everyone. For the record, we do have a quorum. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I've been looking forward to this day. We are going to make some progress on getting the Academy School from the state that it's in, which is, sort of been in limbo for a while, to approved, and we've got a clear path to that. And we will remember it because it is the eclipse day. This is the day we will have moved the ball significantly forward. I have so call the meeting to order. We have the approval of minutes from March 26th. I have a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second,
Any discussion? In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry.
Okay. The chair's comments. I've got a whole slew of of comments again. I wanted to go back to the Board of Selectmen meeting, which was on April 3rd. I'd like to say that was a very positive meeting from the Board of Selectmen. Mark did an excellent job doing a short presentation on where we are and what the current state of the 15.9 budget or the 12.5 million construction budget would bring us. I thought it was very well received by the Board of Selectmen. They gave us a charge to say, to figure out what it is that would be, what would the referendum, what was presented at the referendum, what would that scope and cost be? And that's one of the things we're going to try to do tonight. And Mark again has done the work of putting it together. There were also several members of the public, and there were some pretty pointed questions asked of the primarily of the board, not so much for the committee. You haven't, especially for the board members, if you haven't seen that, you should go back to that August 3rd and check the questions out. There was a wide range, and they were primarily directed at the board with general praise for what the committee has been doing. So thank you, everyone, for that. The basic or the bottom line charge was to produce a design that would meet the scope and the at least the vision that was presented at the referendum. We will be looking to bid that out as quickly as we can, but in a manner that to be determined. There is a second line of approval that's needed or could be needed, and that's will be for the Board of Selectmen to determine if they want to go out to referendum to try to get additional money. Either way, whether we get additional funds or not, we presented a plan to take the money that is the budget that's already approved and build build a community center. It won't be a complete center, but we can move forward. Even we can move forward with a larger sum, or we can move forward with the sum that's already approved. One of the things another thing that's on the current that's on today's agenda is to look forward to our meeting schedule. We may have to opt for a special meeting depending on how much we get done tonight in between the next to meet the charge in time for the Board of Selectmen to consider it. The next Board of Selectmen's meeting is April 29th. They have another one on May 7th and May 20th. I asked for a month to pull this together from the April 3rd meeting. So that would put us somewhere in the May 7th meeting or the April 29th meeting where we would like to go to get to the board. So we'd like to complete as much of this as we can in the time in that time between now and let's say May 7th. One of the things that was also spoken about is a public forum where the board and us, we as a committee would answer questions. We'd answer the questions on the actual design and the build, and the budget would generally go to the Board of Selectmen to answer. But that is also something that we should look forward to in the next 30 to 60 days. Okay, any questions on any of that? Okay, moving on. Liaison reports. Al, you have anything to say?
Joe, I just want to reemphasize what you've already said and make it clear. The selectmen want this project to continue to move ahead and following the timelines that have been stated. And secondarily, the selectmen will also be deciding whether or not to seek additional monies after we hear back from you as to just how much monies that might be.
Thank you, Al. And Joan, is there an invoice packet that requires approval?
No, there isn't.
Nope.
Any budget line item transfers?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. Mark, Collier's update. Do you want to do your report here, or do you want to? I would prefer to do it under the new business. The define expectations of the project scope in time for and establish current estimates. Is that okay? Yep. Okay. And Tom, I haven't asked you would you have anything to talk about here, or you want to wait till?
No, I have no
Mark
new
talks?
business. We're sort of on hold until the committee makes a decision about which direction we go in. So.
Okay. There is this would also be a time for when we take public comment, not necessarily discussion, but comment. And first of all, anyone available here would like to speak in the room?
I would just add my commendation to Mark for the presentation he did last week. I thought that was well done and covered all the bases.
Okay, thank you. Scott? No?
Good. I'm good. Thank you.
Gina, does everyone have their hand up?
No, you do not.
Okay. That'll close out the public comment.
Okay.
The overview of the Board of Selectmen meeting held on April 3rd. I believe actually I just covered that. I jumped the gun a little on that. Any further comments on that meeting? Mark, you were standing there.
No, I thought it was a good meeting, you know, obviously there was a lot of opinions and passion, and that's what you would expect, you know, for these types of projects, and I thought Peggy and the board handled some of the comments and questions very well. So we're just eager and looking forward to just continuing the dialogue and getting this project to the next phase, whatever that might look like, just so that we can start construction and turn over a building that the town will love for years to come.
And Tom, I'd like to thank you. You answered a couple of the questions that, on the scope that were asked, and you were there too. You were in person there. Appreciate you being there. Thank you. Now, Mark, I think this is you. Define expectation of the project scope at the time of referendum and what has changed.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen and walk you through what we came up with earlier today in anticipation of the meeting tonight, so everybody can see my screen.
I'm
Okay.
gonna move my seat because your head's in the middle of the screen.
Oh boy, that's not good.
But I can move over here and get a better view.
Okay. So I took what was previously developed in terms of identifying the scopes of work and the various options, and for my own purposes and maybe for the purposes of helping to get through this exercise, kind of put it all in one tab versus multiple tabs. So what you see listed here on columns C and D represent the scopes of work for the building, the site, and then we have the markups, and then we have escalation, and then it's all summarized down below in terms of the construction budget and where we are today. Again, the project budget is the $15.9 million. The construction budget is the $12.1809 million. So just to make that clear. Okay, so those are the scopes. And then in the various columns, you see off to the right, we have column A, which is what the board and what you asked us to look at today was, what is the referendum scope of work and what does it cost in today or tomorrow's dollars, because they are escalated. That's column A. Column B represents what the building committee quasi recommended back in mid-March with today's value. Column C represents kind of all in, right? Everything that Tom and the team designed, developed, estimated, what would that cost? Column D represents what we shared with the board last week, which is what's a scope that meets the budget that we currently have at the 12.180. And then column E is really just today, if we wanted to make any adjustments to any of the scopes and the values, we could leave, this meeting with column E and what that would represent. Okay. And again, if you go down to the bottom, you see how they're all summarized for building, for site, and escalation, and whether or not we're over or on budget. So again, we'll talk about the details in a moment, but referendum scope is roughly set $3.9 million over the 12.180 million. The recommended building committee from mid-March is $3.5 million over 3.6, all in $5.1 million. What we represented the other night is on budget, and then tonight I just carried over the 319, so that number may change or may stay the same. We talked about this concept of transferring FF&E dollars, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, all the things you see kind of loose in this room. That's $700,000. If that money transferred from FF&E to construction, pick up another $700,000, and it would mean, you're basically 3.2 million over, 2.8, 4.4, surplus of $700,000, and then again, $2.8 million. Okay, so that kind of how this matrix in this Excel file is operating. So in terms of getting into the details of what the referendum scope included, again, I kept the description of the scopes pretty similar. I made a few changes throughout just to make it easier for me to understand, and maybe others that are fairly new to the discussion. So we know we have abatement, hazardous material abatement in the building, and we had identified just over $500,000 worth of abatement scope. So that wouldn't change. Demolition, miscellaneous interior demolition.
Can we just go back to that for a second? We had a couple of questions on that. For one thing, that the scope of work is from 2018. That is correct.
Correct.
And what I recall, I questioned that several months ago, and I was told that those figures would still more or less apply. They were very there was a very fine level of detail that brought into that, and that the figures would already would apply. Is that?
Yeah, I mean,
Can we attest to that?
there's some fluff in here. These are estimates from the consultants. They're not competitively priced numbers. There's a contingency of there of 10%. So yeah, I believe, John, you correct me if I'm wrong, Fuss and O'Neill's taking another look at this just to make sure that the numbers haven't moved all that much. But don't forget, we added escalation to all of the numbers that we had carried for construction, which included, hazardous material. So.
And there was also another comment, I believe, about how much material would have to be taken away. And if I recall, the original number was 800,000.
830,000.
Yes, and because not everything was going to have to be taken away, all the contaminated soil didn't all have to be removed, but there was money in the budget for a section of that soil to be removed.
If I can clarify, a large portion of the abatement budget was associated with removing mastic from the foundation of the building, which is subsurface, if the building were to be removed. But because the majority of the building is going to stay in place, we're going to renovate it in place, that mastic will remain in place, does not have to be removed. It stays encapsulated. So that's why we moved off of the 830 number to a 550 number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and you can see that number is consistent through every option. Same thing with demolition scope. Again, miscellaneous demolition, the demolition of the classroom area for the new entryway, bathroom demolition, what else? I mean, that's probably the bulk of it. The penthouse demolition, that is all consistent. The structural components for the steel and concrete. So again, these scopes really derive from the estimates. So the structural components, the concrete, the steel for the entryway and the infill of the courtyard, which is consistent through every option. Masonry for the elevator shaft that would be installed in the new restroom core at all levels is included. Structural steel for the roof in the courtyard, roofing, and the miscellaneous metals for stairs and whatnot throughout the building. Again, that is consistent through every option. Replacement of the roof, the insulation is consistent. The new entry and courtyard storefront material, so the glass and glazing pieces is consistent. That is the preferred entryway, not the alternate. All new windows and skylights, new elevator, new fire suppression or protection system, so the building will be fully sprinklered. Again, these are all consistent through every option. Plumbing, updated plumbing equipment, fixtures, water distribution throughout the building. HVAC, air conditioning, ductwork, piping, controls, all state-of-the-art electrical distribution throughout the building, low voltage throughout the building. This is where, again, you start to see some variations. Interior walls, so new interior walls. So you can see in the referendum scope, we had youth and family services, we had beach and rec included. That's the 318.9, so that was consistent with the mid-March recommendation. Obviously, the all-in, not included in the scope to meet budget, which we talked about last week. Doors, frames for the interior and exterior are included, not included in the scope to meet budget. Ceilings throughout the building, so that's Madison Youth Family Services and other miscellaneous spaces where there's a drop ceiling, kind of what you see here. or drywall ceiling, so that's consistent for the first three options. The scope to meet budget is you would have less of that. We figured maybe half to 2/3 of the building would get new ceilings, and that could be determined where exactly that happens. Flooring for the entire building, so new carpet, new VCT, new gym flooring is included here. By the way, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong with any of this. And again, in the scope to meet budget, there's some gymnasium flooring, art room flooring, lecture space flooring, as well as some other miscellaneous spaces. Paint the entire building in the first three options. Scope to meet budget, less paint, some spaces go unfinished in terms of the painting. Specialties remain the same. Woods and plastics, it's cabinetry, millwork. Again, for where this was identified, that would be there. So now we're starting to get into, this was not included in the original scope.
Can I stop you there for a minute? I have at least one comment and maybe a question. One thing that didn't come out at the meeting for the town meeting is that the penthouse would be demolished. There were a number of reasons for that. One is there's no way to make it ADA compliant. It would be difficult to reach even for with normal access. And there was something about fire suppression too that might have been difficult, but we want to be clear that, that this is going to be demolished, and that's part of our plan.
Yeah, and by the way, it could have become ADA compliant. It just would have been really expensive to become ADA compliant.
You have to drop people in by helicopter.
No, you could add an elevator in there.
You could add an elevator.
It could have been compliant if that was really, but that was never the intention of the original scope.
It was not, the scope had that had it.
No penthouse.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the original scope said penthouse was gonna be demolished.
Yep.
Okay. There was a change, there was some measure of change that we should remember when we're developing this, and that is that the town offices are still being discussed by the town. Is that correct? And let me finish, and then Scott, I'll ask you. And that there should be a priority for community space in certain areas, and that's going to be discussed at the town level, not necessarily at the committee level, but we will follow that. We will follow the advice of or follow the direction of the town as we move forward. And Scott, has there been any change to that since?
No, I think you described it as I understand it as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So again, the radio repeater system, not in the original scope, is in the mid-March building committee recommended scope, and certainly in the all-in scope. The Academy Street redesign, so the glass and glazing that Tom's team came up with, again, not in the original scope, was in the building committee in the all-in. It's not in the building committee in March.
Could you explain that?
What's that?
What is that the glass in the
On the opposite side. So you know where you have the glass for the main entry on the west?
Mm-hmm.
I believe you had a similar detail and concept on
East.
the east side.
Oh, okay.
So across from Deacon John Grave House.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, that's, boy, I didn't know that. Must have been out for a long time.
It was taken out during the value engineering process.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It was interesting because I heard from somebody today that they thought that area would be great to do that because they thought that whole wall facing the Deacon John house was John Deacon, it was too much like just this big brick blob, so to speak. And I said, well, it's out at this point.
It's been a crypt for like almost 100 years, so.
Yeah.
We should recognize it for what it is.
Yes, exactly.
The courtyard clear story window, not in the original referendum scope, was in the mid-March building committee scope, and is in the all-in scope. Again, all these things are not in the scope to meet budget, obviously. Main stage renovation, this is the gym. We did have some dollars associated with the renovations, so back when we were developing the budget, we did have, it was
Oh,
part of the
okay.
50-something thousand square feet. And it was considered light renovation, so we used the same value that we carried for the light renovations for that square footage. So we did, you know, have $125,000 in there for some level of renovation, but it was more finish upgrades and MEP systems. But obviously, the building committee had a more enhanced scope, which is included here in columns B and in column C. Same idea with the bleachers in the gymnasium. They were not intended to be replaced originally, but they are recommended mid-March and all in. Basketball equipment and scoreboard was not originally intended. Again, that was really just to clean it up. New finishes, new mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, new windows. That was really the desired or intended scope of work for that gymnasium. New recital stage with ramp. So I believe this was in the original scope. We needed to make, you know, that area ADA compliant, which it currently isn't. So we carried that value as a referendum scope. That carries through. And then operable partitions were not part of the original scope, but they were in the mid-March and all that. So that's the building. And if you go to the site, yep.
Go ahead.
Question about the main stage renovations. Is there any equipment included in that? Or
No,
is that?
that would
is that
be
something
under,
that would be
that's the FF&E, yeah.
There's a couple of things that we should probably, that I wanted to discuss. The clear story, you know, I believe that was recommended. I believe that's correctly stated. The 10-tier bleacher system, I'm not sure that was in our recommended design. That was part of the design.
Actually, it was on the 319 meeting, it was because it goes along with, if you're gonna renovate the main stage, you need the bleachers to come out to see it.
So that
So
would,
the March 19th meeting, that's what we did recommend.
okay, so that would tie into the stage, the 400,000. So it'd be 400,000 for the stage plus 40 something, whatever that is, 42,000.
Right.
Okay.
New recital hall with ramp. This one I know for sure that we have not finished we did not approve necessarily the design of lowering the stage to 1 foot. That there was discussion around that, and we said we were going to make that a TBD. Like, for the people on the committee, is that correct?
Well, in the March 19th meeting, we kind of said, okay, if we're gonna do the main stage, then the 1 foot recital stage, because otherwise it would be very difficult to make that ADA compliant if you don't lower that stage.
Well, it's not necessarily, you just need a lift, which is not, that's no fun.
It's a ramp in the back.
There's a ramp in the back if it's a foot off the ground.
No,
If it's 3 feet off the ground, there are other ways to do it.
you originally, Tom, you said, leave it as it is and put a ramp in the back.
In the very original stage of the design, we said we could make a ramp to get to it, but the existing stage is too high, you can't, there's not enough room to make a ramp that high. So we proposed reconstructing the stage at 18 inches above grade, and we have enough room for an 18-inch ramp behind the stage. Or you could provide a lift to the existing stage, but providing a lift was a pretty expensive endeavor. It requires maintenance contract and service. We didn't really recommend that approach.
Interestingly enough, I'll pass this around. This is what the stage looks like when it was used. This goes back several, turn it around. That's my son in the middle. It is not such a, it is not a totally unusable space at the current height.
How old is he?
He's 40 now.
No, how old was
Oh, he's 10.
he? He's what?
I think he's 10.
Okay.
So they're like this big.
Right.
Oh, it's very useful.
They pass around evidence in a court. You,
And that was a kind of a library then, so you still see the
yeah, I
shelves.
was
in
gonna
the
say,
library.
you can see
And
that.
there's seats in the back, and then they're up on the stage.
Joe, this is John. I've mentioned a couple of times, I think we need to have these dedicated conversations about what are we going to do with performance stages? What are we going to do with the gymnasium? And I still strongly believe that that's a conversation that we need to have.
Yep, I agree, John. We really want to get into those details and make sure we're all on the same page on that. Absolutely.
So how do we represent that here in dollars for the world to see?
Well, the recommendation was made last time to take the main stage and the recital stage and combine those two into a pool and maintain that pool for whatever the decision is going to be going forward.
Mhm.
And
So-
I hate to keep revisiting this every time we take a look at another budget. I'd rather just we make that decision to discuss it more before we go out to design bids and we move on to more important things for right now.
I believe that's I believe that's a wonderful solution. And given the level of accuracy that we need here, can we just take the $400,000 number and say we're going to design and implement 2 stages with that at some level, or should we make it 437 or?
Yeah, I would suggest 437 and call it stage renovations.
I would add actually in the 42,000 for the bleachers, because the bleachers would only be used for stage, not for any kind of basketball.
Yeah,
As-
that makes sense.
It's about $543,000 for the 4 cells that are highlighted. That includes the equipment in the scoreboard. I don't know if you need the equipment in the scoreboard. If this is really intended to be, performance.
I think
not-
the equipment and scoreboard are a completely different issue. It's going to be used as a gymnasium, so you're going to need the sport equipment for the sport portion of what goes on in the gym. I think the only real question is, and I agree with the 10-tier bleacher system probably should be in there as well if the primary intent is to support main stage viewing.
Nick, are there alternates to the 10-stage bleachers also?
Is that thoughts?
Yes, not in this, not previously discussed, but would that be up for discussion with other alternates for viewing or putting seats in the gym?
Yeah.
Okay, then can we do as we requested, that this becomes stage or some descriptor and put it as a single line item and the design, put the design to be discussed and approved by everyone, not just the committee, at a time when we have more, at a future time when we have more time to discuss the fine details.
Mhm.
What number should we put in? So can we?
479,000 is taking main stage, tier bleaker, and new recital stage with ramp and putting them together. How does that sound? So if you take row 34, move it below row 35 and then combine those three together, I think that gives you a total number of 479.
Yeah,
Or
your
just
four
479,000.
seventy-nine doesn't include the equipment in the scoreboard, but it includes the recital stage, the 10-tier bleachers, and the main stage, right? That's how you're getting 479, Joan?
Yes, that's what I'm putting up for 479 too. Sorry, 479 200.
Again, the question is, leaving this meeting, do we keep the 64,000 in for the equipment, or do we take that out?
Oh, I think you have to keep that in.
Okay. Yeah, but that's what I thought, based
That's
on what
the
we've done.
scoreboard and,
Yeah, the basketball equipment and the scoreboard, and, you know.
Yeah. And it may be that we look at that and say, do we really need a scoreboard if it's only one court and, you know, how that kind of thing. So
I don't know, do you need a scoreboard? And my kids played lots of youth basketball, and there was no scoreboard like in a high school gym.
you know, my kids played, like that too, and scoreboards weren't invented yet.
Yeah, I mean, usually they have a score table, they have a little scoreboard thing, you know, but, you know, that's, again, I don't know how they're gonna use this.
That just sounds like a lot of money for a scoreboard, but you have to install it and the electrical, I got all that.
I'll just point out that those are things that can be added at a later date as one-off.
So did you take the scoreboard out?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's a great gift option for somebody.
Austin has
I
his
think
hand
Austin
up.
raised his hand.
Uh-oh.
Where's
Now,
us?
I'm not sure what basketball equipment is. If that's the backboards, then we obviously need that.
that I think we need. I think you keep the 64,000 once again until we get into more details. And if something comes up that we don't, if we save money, we can put it somewhere else, or we can save money, period. If we decide not to use the scoreboard.
So the other question is how many backboards do you need? Do you need 6, you know, I mean, and then, you know, splitting it for the little kids on the sides, or do you just need 4?
I think Austin's coming.
Austin may have a word to say.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I appreciate the conversation and I think it's an important one to have. But this is, you know, one of the main things that we gain from having the community center is a workable basketball court, sport court for a variety of things. If we're taking a scoreboard out, looking at not putting in backboards or maybe just having full court, it's really limiting what we could do in an already limited building. I think we need to really be careful what is taken out in the gym to make it a functioning gymnasium for not only basketball, but for other sports as well.
So I would suggest we leave it in for now.
Predominant cleaning comes into town.
I would suggest we go ahead and leave it
We
in
just
for now
went
until
basketball, I don't know about equipment, that's right. But the, well, what's the difference between basketball equipment and FFE? At this level?
Usually this is installed by the contractor, so that's why it falls under construction. And there's an infrastructure component to it.
It's physically attached to the building.
It's physically attached to the building, but also, you know.
So we're talking about the backboards and the scoreboards. And
That's, you still have power, you have other components.
Can we just put it in as one single item? Gym
Fit out.
fit out, or basketball equipment, or just put one line basketball equipment and scoreboard and just keep it in. I don't know if we need that many words, that's all.
I wouldn't fixate on the words, but the bottom line is we'll keep the $64,000 in at this point,
Okay.
is what I'm hearing. Okay. All right.
But can you go back up to the 400,000 and add in 42,200 and 37?
Well, it's already hearing. I mean, again, I could move them up. It's not changing the 11,205.
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of verbiage comes along with this.
I understand, but in terms of just coming up with a number, right? The Board of Selectmen asks us for what is a number to reflect what the building committee ultimately wants. Yeah, we can play around with this, but the number doesn't change. Essentially.
But we should combine those.
We can combine any one of these if we want. But let's just,
Maybe, well, for now, just sort of to remind us, if you could highlight those three numbers, you know, shade them some interesting color.
all right, I'll combine those into one value.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on to the site. Again, outside the building, site prep and demolition, grading, you name it, we had $273,000. That was all four options. Water line, that's consistent. Paving of parking lot, again, if you remember from the presentation, we took that out unfortunately to stay on budget, so you're keeping what you currently have there. We had the exterior improvements identified, those were not included. Sanitary is in all of the options. Geothermal is in the referendum scope, but we took it out to the building committee in mid-March. Obviously, if we're all in. The ball field and the playgrounds were not in the original referendum scope. Playground is in the building committee recommended for mid-March. Site upgrades and patio, we did have that in the original scope. The building committee took out about a third of that value, so we kept something in there. We had none in the scope to meet budget.
Site upgrades and patio. That we have, was that $40,000 in the original budget?
$640,000.
$640,000 was in the original budget.
That's not the budget, that's the scope. Don't forget, these numbers are in today's or tomorrow's numbers.
Okay, so we had like 95,000 or
Yeah,
something.
we had, I forget what the value was, but we had, conceptually, a value for some level of site improvements. You get $200,000, something like that.
200.
Right.
This
And-
includes landscaping and benches and.
A fountain.
No,
We've been to Italy, you know you need a fountain.
we had a statue to.
So you donating that one, Joe?
Yeah.
Bring one back from Italy?
Water fountain in the,
The LA Forum has Kobe Bryant, Madison Academy, Joe Valentine. All right, then the various markups are formulaic based upon percentages that the estimator suggested we carry. Totaling here, escalation to construction is identified there. That's also formulaic. So here's the total escalated construction total. Referendum scope 16.094. Building committee recommendation of 15.7. All in 17.3. Scope to meet budget 12.1. Our budget over by 3.9 million, 3.5 million, 5.1 million on budget. And as we discussed, if we wanted to transfer the FF&E budget to construction, it lessens the overage by the $700,000.
I think the only way we do that is in the limited scope budget. The one that meets the original budget. I think anywhere else, that's not necessary.
And
Just a reminder too, that the transfer of FF&E funds would be limited to FF&E that's not consumed by whatever gets improved in the partial plan.
Right, yep.
So I would recommend taking that out, except in the case of the
Scope to meet budget.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't think that was,
is that what you were suggesting?
no. It would be scaled in the scope to meet budget to whatever is required for the rooms that are gonna be improved. Because that's that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Conversation was take the 700, move it above the line and buy more
Mhm.
basically.
Okay, well, anyway, this is just an, an exercise in what we have for dollars available. Okay. That's the spreadsheet. So in terms of what I think the board was looking for, column A represents that. The referendum scope based upon the dollars today, dollars tomorrow, or $3.9 million over budget.
And then and then where are there differences between column A and column B?
Well, the big one is, don't forget, geothermal was taken out. And then we added the stage renovation scope, so that's probably, so,
Added the playground.
yeah, we added the playground here. So we took out about, I don't know, $800,000 roughly.
Okay, so that's already taken out. So.
Geothermal's out, we added the
Okay, you've
playground.
already made those, okay.
On the building side, we added about $500,000. The bulk of that is right here. The gym, bleachers, equipment, operable partitions, clear story. That's pretty much everything right here.
Mhm.
In the recommended scope, you're not including the money for the town offices, or that is in the,
That's in there.
okay.
Yep.
I could imagine some questions about what do we get for 400,000 versus what we get for $126,000.
Yeah, what was in the estimate? Or what came out? Arrive that number.
The original scope, the thinking was we would refinish the stage, we would rebuild the proscenium, maybe add curtains. It was, maybe add equipment for the light, for the lift area, the stage well, but we didn't anticipate a full lighting, digital control, sound system. So,
So-
based on our feedback, we created an allocation, basically an allowance to provide fit out stage.
But that makes it sound like the 400 does include specialty equipment.
It does include some, but keep in mind it's an allowance. We
Right,
can
but,
buy what we can afford.
but there's an assumption that there's some equipment here. It's not all down in FF&E.
Right.
Stage specific.
So the sound and lighting systems, for example.
Inside.
Joan or John, you're on the other end. Do you have any comments, questions?
I think the March 19th meeting, we went into fairly detail. I agree with John that we need, in the combining, then we'll get into exactly what we're gonna get for main stage and recital stage and what will work and what won't work. I think this is pretty good. I think the other point that was made back on the 19th was like, if we have this great building and there's no landscaping and outdoor space, it really, because it's a main building downtown, it really lends itself to outdoor activity and space and that kind of thing, which is why we ended up putting about 450,000 in for that. And I think that's appropriate. We didn't go all in. We said, okay, let's try to do that. But my thought process would be if there's any savings anywhere, those would be nice to haves. some more outdoor space. Because as we start coming, it's one thing to really focus on the building when we're in the middle of winter, and now that we're in spring and it's starting to feel like spring, there's a lot of people that'll be out and about, and that'll be a nice gathering space to be able to sit and do things, or even have outdoor activities there. So I really like the idea that I was hesitant initially, but I thought we came down to a good number.
That was an important point back for the, just as I was a part of the advisory committee as well. Just the passive use of the building was something that was really attractive to a lot of people, especially young people. So if you want to think about young people investing and wanting to spend time in this building, the aesthetics on the outside need to be inviting, and having places for people to sit and talk without having a thing to do in there was very important in that regard. And I think a lot of adults would appreciate that as well.
How much is in for the sanitary system?
210,000.
Isn't that light? I thought it was over 300,000.
John. I mean, that's a number that I've seen consistently throughout
Yeah,
the
that's
presentation.
the number that's been carried.
I don't know, some of that money is probably distributed in the site work as well, site utility. I have to follow up.
What number did you think we said was over 300,000 for the site sanitation?
I remember like 320. But
I thought it was 225, but then again. But
Okay, some of the number could be into the site prep and demo. Depends on where the estimators put it, honestly.
okay.
oh, I see. Yep.
This may be just the chambers themselves, the leaching fields, and piping.
Maybe that's it.
But either way, again, without getting into the minutia of the line item details, it's covered under the $1.5 million.
I could share the two estimators. One estimator had 243, the other estimator had 263, but those are with the markups included. So
That's okay. That's where we're.
yeah, that may be what you're thinking.
Makes it, yeah, okay.
So the 210 is without the markup.
Got it.
So adding that in, you're closer to the 263.
Tom, what do you think?
What do I think?
Go ahead. Burst my bubble.
Burst your bubble, I think the committee's done a lot of diligence and you followed the right path. I really think it's a matter of how you move forward. If you're gonna do it in a phased process and you're gonna build a base, the recommended, you commit to moving forward with the infrastructure work that has to be done. And then as a second phase, the community can pursue how to get the rest of the project. However, no, I'm not a resident here in Madison. I'm just the architect, but I think if you're gonna do it, you should do the project so that it can be a fully functional and a wonderful asset for the town of Madison. I think the recommended scope of work that you put together in column B is call it value engineered, but a pared down scope of work that provides a great facility for the town and has made some good fiduciary decisions. So I would proceed two ways, and the town council is gonna, board of selectmen's gonna advise you on that, but you either try and go for the money up front, do the whole project in line B, column B, or you proceed as a phased approach with column D and then attempt to pursue the additional funds to supplement the project. If that's not successful, then hopefully over time, the town can supplement the facility with various funds from different sources.
You had some suggestions for that. Mark,
For which part?
for how we might design and phase the project.
Yeah, well, what I was gonna say is you could move forward with releasing the design team to move forward with the design documentation, and we could put in place kind of a belt and suspenders where some of these items that you wanna, add that were not part of the referendum scope, or even if they were part of the referendum scope, as add alternates. And we could, have a base bid. We don't wanna have a lot of add alternates. We wanna have maybe a half a dozen or so, but I think there are, like the main stage, right, that could be an add alternate. You could isolate all the work for that to make it an add alternate. And if the bids come in favorable, you can add that. We're also doing another estimate, right? The market will speak to us again at, that 80%, 90% of the construction documentation phase. And let's do another sanity test to see where the market is. We are seeing pretty good pricing and bidding in some of our markets, in some of our projects. So maybe that'll help. Maybe that's telling to the estimators. But I think we could move forward with a recommended scope, design it, estimate it, come up with an alternate strategy, tell us where we need to be financially. And by the time we get to the fall, figure out where or if we need, additional funds or how much we want an additional fund. So if the board was, okay, move forward with your column B, your recommended scope, and we know we're roughly $3.5 million over, that number may change when we do another estimate. And by the time we get to the fall, we'll know, and then you can draft language for a referenda for up to a certain amount. We get bids. Let's say we don't need, what's anticipated because the bidding climate has adjusted and more favorably. But I think we need to definitely get the design team moving forward, or that number is gonna increase.
Time is money.
Escalation is not, right?
Escalation is negative, never negative, is what you're telling
No,
me.
it's no. It happened for a short period when COVID first hit. And then it took off. Right?
Very short,
Very short.
couple months.
We hit, and we had one project that bid, again, COVID stinks and some for a lot of reasons, way more beyond project pricing. But we had one project that bid right when COVID hit and it came in significantly under budget. After that, everything has gone on. So,
Hey, Mark?
yeah.
I just want to make sure that the comment on FFE is clear. What I'm suggesting we have to do is in scope to meet budget, in order to know how much additional improvements we can add in, we need to understand what portion of FFE is required for the gym, the stage, the art room. And the rest of that, we need to transfer into the how
Yes.
far we go in the scope to meet budget. I wasn't intending that we take FFE out of all the others, unless it's identifying just FFE that's required for the scope that's defined.
Right, so with the scope to meet budget, if we still kept, let's say 200,000 of FF&E.
So that would say 200,000 is in excess and could be transferred into the building scope?
Correct.
Okay. Got it.
And
Tommy, Mark just got into your area. Do we start the design documents or the
construction documents.
construction documents now? How does that? What would that take for you to start? Like, when you go back to the office?
It'd take a vote from this committee. By contract, I have to be directed by the committee to move forward, but we start working and it's about a 3-month exercise with about a month of, estimating and budget reconciliation.
So I put up on the screen, if you remember, the schedule that we displayed during the Board of Selectmen hearing. So, yeah, we can move forward in this timeline. We could get to bid in August. You know, it's a good time to bid, fall. Contractors get, you know, their backlog for 2025. It's a good time to hit the market.
Gene, has any of the other committee members signed on?
Nope.
I would not, I'd like to take that vote, Tom, but I would like to have the whole committee represented if we're gonna do that. If I took a poll of the 4 members here, would you be in favor of taking on that risk and putting beginning the construction documents so that we can move forward we can move forward with the project from this moment and not wait until we have, you know, all the clarity on how much the actual budget could be.
And that's based upon this recommended scope,
Column
column B.
and
So if we do column B and something happens and we have to go to scope to meet budget, it's easier to remove those pieces out, correct? Than to add them later in.
Your answer, Tom. Yeah, I think
Oh,
So it's
were you asking me, Joe? And we would approach it slightly differently. We would design scope to meet budget, and then we would add on to that 5 or 6 add alternates that
Okay,
get us to the recommended scope. It may not
Okay.
be that clean, but that would be the approach.
Okay.
And yes, if you tell me to proceed today to design the scope to meet budget, and then 3 months from now you say, okay, Tom, we want you to change the design and add all this stuff back in. I would probably have to request additional services.
So you would.
so we
prefer-
could do scope to meet budget, but with all the add alternates that are being approved as of the 3/19 or today's.
correct.
Okay,
design the project that's described in column B. And you break it up into, as you go through the design, how much, or how you get to column D plus the alternates that get you the additional money to get them to column B.
Yes, so for instance, I would, as Mark indicated, I would take the things that are associated with the stage upgrades all lumped together, the $479,000, that would be an add alternate. The exterior patio work, site work, the extra site work, and, you know, maybe upgrades to the parking or whatever's in the site work, that would be add alternate to.
The playground.
The
Playground, the things that are very clearly separated, those are the best add alternates. Then I would probably take the fit and fit out of the office spaces and literally make those a nice, clean add alternate. So that's probably the way I would approach it. I don't think we've covered all of the gap, but somewhere's in here, we would try and find a couple more alternates that cover the gap.
So that would be the option I would.
Okay. John, on the
so I just have one question looking at this. The radio repeater system is not in the scope to meet budget. Wasn't that a critical piece or no?
That'll be in there. I mean, that'll be in there. And when Mark takes the 500,000 from FF&E and puts it into scope to meet budget, he'll put 32.
Got it. Yep, okay. Yep, okay, now I see what you're saying there. Okay. Great.
Joe, in answer to your question, if we're gonna move to construction bids, that kind of locks in the final design. Don't we need to have those?
Yeah, we're not moving to bids, we're moving to construction documentation, which is just
Oh,
further
okay.
advancing the drawings, John.
All right, so construction bids, we need to have all those configuration decisions made before we get there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
before we go to bid, which is in basically August, September. we'll
Okay,
have that
this is
defined.
just final construction documents. Got it.
This is just advancing the drawings to the next phase, which is construction document phase.
And we'll get another
So
estimate.
we're doing another round of estimating.
Okay.
So, Joan, would you be in favor to move forward?
Yes, I would be in favor. Oh, sorry. Was that John or Joan? Sorry.
And John,
Yes,
and I would too. We just need to get, we have a quorum, we could do it. But I would rather get the input from our other members, and we may be able to do that as another meeting. It could just be enough to get a quorum and move ahead with that single item.
So
Right.
Joe,
Yes,
since we had everyone on the 319 meeting, except for you, that was all the other members were approving this list.
okay, but
Do you know what I'm saying?
this is more than approving the list. This is now
Different.
approving spending money.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
What about, can I have a question?
Sure.
So for the Board of Selectmen follow-up, Al, I don't know if you're still on the line. Are we just presenting column A, column B? What do we need to share with the board?
The answer is no and no. The answer, what we present to the board is a verbal description of what's in the building and what you get. You get you get fit out of all the spaces, you get a full, you get the elevator, you get the roof, you get the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is not, this is behind that, but we need a description, a verbal description of what you get.
But what
This
we
is-
need to do is give them the numbers for, I believe, B and D, correct?
I think they wanted the number for column A, which was, what is the value of the referendum
Right.
scope, right? And then, do we want to share with them just, column B, which would be column E with cleaned up language for some of the scopes? Say, yeah, if you wanted everything in the original referendum, it's 3.9 million, but we as a committee are recommending a scope that might approach 3.5 million.
And a verbal description of that scope is important to the board, not necessarily because they're approving the numbers, but we're going to have to talk to the public about it.
Mhm.
And a line of 20, how many rows there? I can't read the number of rows, 25 or 30 rows of numbers does not equal a building.
Mhm.
A building is the pictures that you did.
We can also talk about the strategy,
You
right?
can talk about the
Control
strategy.
the
You can talk about
dollars.
the strategy.
The alternate
Yes.
approach.
Yep. But they will, if the Board of Selectmen decides to go back to referendum, they will need that number. And you're right, Joe, we should make sure that we're 100% behind that,
But
the
they
entire
leave
committee.
Leave the number in the description. Going out with a number that says we need an extra $3 million, I can't say that's a very persuasive way to get votes.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just want to make sure that,
How many people want to vote for more than 3 million, for an extra $3 million?
yeah, no.
How many people want to vote for a fountain and
Joe Valentine
grass
statue.
and hayes, and Joe Valentine statue, and a plaque with the committee members' names on it? See, that'll get your votes.
But the referendum question will need a dollar figure behind it. So that's where we need, as a full committee, need to do the full vote.
Yes, and we have to vote for the dollars.
Okay. Yeah, again, I just want to make sure that I understand what the board is expecting at the end of this month.
They will expect those numbers as we presented in, but in A, well, I guess in all of them, we'd have to discuss all of them. But you'd also have to discuss the scope in all of them. Well, for instance, people used to look at their watch to see what time it was. You could do that over there. People look at their watch now because they're getting an email.
Exactly.
Keep in mind that you've actually just presented the delta numbers to the committee and the public. so-
Yes.
I think, Joe, what I hear you saying is maybe a table with a list of functionality that can be provided to the community on the left side, and then each of the options going across, and either it's in or out.
Oh, that's a nice idea.
We shouldn't be. I can be corrected on this, but I will say adamantly that we shouldn't be thinking of tables and rows and columns. When we go to the public, we should be thinking of paragraphs and pictures.
But I think it's,
Bullet points and pictures, sorry.
I think it's hard to understand what you get and don't get unless you put it into a tabular format that says, in this option, these are the things you get. By definition, anything that's blank are the things you don't get. And it's pretty easy to form a picture around what it looks like in that format.
I mean, we could create something similar to this, but I'm just simply asking what Al and the board members are expecting from us, including the committee, at that
They're
special.
they're expecting what we did here
This,
with descriptions.
Is Al still on?
Yeah, maybe Al.
Al, you there?
Yes, indeed. Look, the selectmen expect this process to continue. So if the existing process continues, what are we going to get for 15 Mine? Then we are interested in knowing if the selectmen decide to take this to referendum for additional monies, what is the number we should take to referendum? And we are looking for the committee's wisdom on what is the number we should take to referendum.
Well, as a description of what
Yeah.
additional
Yeah.
features would be included.
Right, yeah, so we could, so if we're saying 3.5, if that was the number that was in the referendum, we could package the 3.5 in something that looks like this, right? And this is what you get for the additional $3.5 million.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be
You get-
Excel spreadsheets and.
You get all three floors. Right now, you only get two. So,
Yeah, we don't have to get into it now, but
Yeah,
the point is,
exactly.
it would be some level of a presentation of whatever this committee decided, which is right now roughly $3.5 million.
and again, I'm gonna be obnoxious. There are probably about 10 people in the town who would vote to spend $3.5 million more than we're going to. There should be a majority of people in the town who will spend the $3.5 million to get the entire building, to get with the description, get all the floors, all the rooms, and a word picture of what that's going to be. You can walk down the corridors, you can go up and down the stairs, you can take the elevator, you can meet in the lounge.
And with the caveat that we will be bonding less. So it will actually cost the taxpayers less money because we're bonding less than the
Yes.
15.9.
Yes, we'll forget that part.
Let's not forget that part at all. It's a big one.
So we're gonna get all this and it's gonna cost you less, so.
Less than what you've already approved.
Right.
Less than what was already approved, correct?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And if we wanted to take this to the Board of Selectmen, how soon could we be ready? How soon could we be ready?
Everybody's in agreement with this. But you wanna, so how would we get the other board members to sign
Well,
off?
let's take one step at a time. The Board of Selectmen have a meeting on April 29th. I don't know what's that. Al, you still there?
I'm here, I'm checking my calendar. You're asking me about the 29th.
There's a 29th, May 7th, and May 20th. Those were the three next
Yes.
Board of Selectmen meetings I saw. And there's
Yes.
also a referendum on the budget in there somewhere. That's between the 7th and the 20th. When would be an appropriate time to come back to the Board of Selectmen?
The sooner the sooner the better, Joe. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we called a special meeting whenever you're ready. So, the selectmen want this project to continue onwards. And it's really just a question of whether or not we ask for more money at this time. So, I would say the sooner you can come back to us, the better. I think the selectmen are very aware of the cost of escalation due to inflation. And so I don't see any advantage in waiting. When you're ready, please come back to us.
Can we move forward from here with what we had to be ready to speak to the board by April 29th at the latest? That's 20 days from now.
Yes, me? Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Mark?
Tom,
Tom?
Oh,
what
yeah,
marks enough?
I mean, we have the information, so.
So if we have all the information and we have, so maybe for the 23rd meeting, our April 23rd meeting, maybe that's when you guys, we start reviewing what the presentation would be to the Board of Selectmen to kind of get the details. And then, and if we have the whole membership there, then we can also approve the numbers. Does that make sense?
I like it. Pam?
You bet. We have a decision.
I think we have a decision. It's not a vote, but we have a decision
In direction.
and direction.
Now we just have to twist a lot of arms and make sure no matter where people are, they just got to be here on the 23rd. Zoom, person, whatever.
If they are not, then we'll call a special meeting between now and the 23rd with the
Yep.
one item on the agenda, and that's to approve the plans going forward to design the whole, to design what we talked about.
So Tom's not getting direction tonight to proceed with the construction documents. That'll wait until after the 23rd.
Correct.
If it means spending more money, that means that is correct.
Okay. Okay.
And we will poll the committee and see what we can, see if we can get either additional discussion or a meeting, special meeting to move forward, or a full discussion on the 23rd. What's our next? Our meeting's the 23rd.
I think that the 23rd is great because that gives us 2 weeks and we make, and it's already on all of our calendars. So we just need to poll and make sure that people can get there, right?
Right.
Yeah. And it's enough time before the Board of Selectmen meeting on the 29th.
I like it when a plan comes together.
Good job, Joe.
Good job, everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think we went right down the list. Overview of the meetings, 10, define expectations, project scope, that was what we just did. Establish current estimates, we did. Discussion of upcoming meetings, we did. Lastly, public comment. Jeannie, anyone online?
People are online, no hands are raised.
Anybody in the room? Please introduce
Hi,
yourself.
I'm Kevin Ovian. I'm at 317 Boston
You
Post
were
Road.
online earlier.
I was, I switched. I listened to the meeting driving here. Thank you very much, board and the professionals in the room for the work done so far. I think it's been a long haul. And I'm not sure if this is a comment period or a question period, so I guess I'll just make a comment. If an answer is possible. So we voted for this referendum in February of 22, 15.9 million. And with the understanding, based on the original timeline that was developed by Colliers and um, the team that, you know, that it would open sometime in 2024. That was the original, and there's been delays, I understand that. And as a result, there's been cost escalations, and now, you know, there's this scope, that there's this additional money that very likely will go to the town for a request for additional funds. And I guess in February of 2022, I had a concern that the costs were going to be higher than 15.9 million once we started the construction. And here we are, you know, 2+ years later, and the costs have gone up, and we haven't started construction. I still have the concern that once the abatement begins, that there will be unforeseen additional costs. And I'm trying to understand, you know, the risk and where that risk is. And I know that there was discussion about how the project will be managed through a contract manager, construction manager or not. I can't remember where that left off, but I see a great amount of risk for additional cost once the demolition begins and the abatement begins. That I'm trying to understand in the spreadsheet if it's factored in, if there's, you know, if those costs are much higher once the construction begins, that those costs are covered in this budget and in what you're going to likely bring to the town in the form of an additional request for $3.5 million. And I've been following your line by line items, trying to figure that out. And so again, my comment is that I know we're all professionals in this room, but if those costs escalate once the demo begins in that building and the costs go up, is the town going to be, you know, is the project at risk for additional funds that here on April 8th are still not comprehended because you don't really know what's in that building. So my background, I run an environmental lab, you know, I'm very involved with, you know, how, you know, how construction and on how hazardous materials are handled and the costs involved. So it's just a general question that I have or a comment. You don't have to answer it.
Well, I think what we could do is we could pull up the spreadsheet. Is the contingency?
So there's two things. The value that we included in the original $15.9 million had a 10% contingency for the unknown, right? Because you're right. You know, environmental consultants can only see and touch what they can see and touch. And if you start pulling things apart, oops, I didn't see that asbestos wrap or whatever. So that's the first level of contingency. The second level is we have an owner's contingency for the unforeseen built into the overall project cost. So you wouldn't see it in any of the spreadsheets that we share tonight because those are just construction costs. But we have fees and expenses and contingency for the unforeseen to be used during the course of construction to cover unforeseen conditions.
Okay.
If I can add to that, we also have a design and estimating contingency on top of those, which right now is 5% of the project amount. And that contingency will likely reduce as we develop the documents and try and mitigate more risk by putting more detail in it. Part of that effort is a revisit with the environmental consultant to re-explore the costs to make sure the costs associated with the projected scope are adjusted to current marketplace costs. So I anticipate that some of that design and estimating contingency is going to go towards any cost increases based on the scope that we know of. Part of this 3-step process that the committee has undertaken of developing schematic designs, doing estimates, design development, and then construction documents and doing estimating, is to try and mitigate cost risk by, incrementally creating more detail in the documentation, trying to do discovery through the documentation phase and identifying cost. Now, all that being said, construction, particularly when you're dealing with renovated buildings, will have, the potential for unforeseen costs, and that's why projects have contingencies. But the goal is to try and mitigate as much of that as possible up front, so that when we get into the construction phase, the contingencies that are in place are enough to cover it. We've had good success, my team. I've done a number of projects with Colliers on this. We've had really good success delivering the project within a 4% delta, one way or the other. Partially because of this process. Does that eliminate all the risk? No, I mean, you're a professional in the industry, so you're aware that there's never no risk. I mean, as any developer, and in this case, the community is acting as developer, you have to presume that there's a certain amount of risk. But our goal is to help the town minimize that risk and keep it as low as possible.
Can I make one more comment?
Go ahead.
I appreciate that. That's very helpful. I also recognize that when this was originally put together by you guys, that those contingencies were put in when we voted in February of 2022. And they're in there now, and we're looking for an additional $3.5 million. So, okay, if you came within, you typically come within 4%, that's great. I hope that's the case. This is a very high risk building. And, I would just say that, and I'm not sure if you guys did the library project in town. But that library project was, new construction, and the budget that we all voted on was 9 million. And there was an additional $1.5 million cost overrun on that project, and that was a new building. And so I just see that there being a lot of risk with this project. And maybe before going to the town with the $3.5 million, we're absolutely sure that, that's the number. And just real quickly, I'm not sure with two and a half years since this project was approved, why the building couldn't have been secured and the abatement, the demo, and the all of that part of it done, because the money was there. And that could have been done, and that risk could have been eliminated, or, you could have gotten it to that point. I'm not sure. Is there a reason why that couldn't have been phased in and done in like 2022 or 2023?
I think you'd have to ask the board that's the Board of Selectmen committee, because that's we were called as a committee, and we were called to do the process that we're doing in mid 2023.
Then we started,
Yeah,
summer of 2022.
summer of 2022.
Yeah.
So we were not called to do that. And to answer your first question, the town has invested in a process where we have, in taking it step by step, have been trying to reduce risk. So the two things, you could reduce risk by actually doing a lot of the work up front, or you could reduce risk by following the process. And we've chosen to reduce risk by following a process that examines at each stage what what the risks are and how we might mitigate.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You are.
Jim is online.
Pardon?
And please state your name.
Oh, okay.
Hi, it's Jim Schmaltz from Madison.
Okay, Jim, you have a comment?
Yeah, it was just following up on what the previous gentleman was talking about on the abatement costs. I think you guys need to spend a couple minutes and run through the existing documents. There's the new document from January of this year that has the lead in the soil outside that I think needs to get resolved sooner than later. But on the interior, there's a 2018 is a cost estimate for abatement, and it's not a full abatement. That was over 800,000, and there wasn't any lead paint contingency in it. And when you're, like when I read through that, it's talking about, like, okay, I'm assuming it's going to be tearing out all of the flooring and everything like that. And it almost seems like there's some talk about encapsulating stuff, which I don't know, how good of an idea that is, right? So if you're going to encapsulate the gym floor and then put wood flooring down, now it's going to be a hazard down the road when you go to have to repair it. If the other thing that was in there is it was based on reports from like 2015, 2016. You read through those reports and there's quite a bit in there, and it says, don't do estimates off of this, which is what happened. So I think the gentleman's right. I think it's, you're in 2018, they were talking about an abatement to meet OSHA work requirements. They didn't have any lead paint removable. The lead paint removal now stuff is anything over, I think it's 12 square inches. If you're disturbing it, you've got to, HEPA the whole thing. So realistically, the entire interiors kind of get demolished. And I don't know if that's in there. You look at the plans in the kitchen, where I see an issue is, the kitchen's in the basement, so now you got to exhaust it out. Are you going to exhaust out to the roof? I mean, that's probably, you guys, I'm sure have done those. So it's like a $50,000-$60,000 exhaust system for the kitchen. And then, oh, I had another question there too. So I think I'll just leave it there. I'll try to send an email, with a little bit more detail on stuff for you. But I think, what you don't want to do is decide, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to stay with our budget and not, go for more money. Either way, I think you need to have those realistic numbers before you kind of finalize, because I think that could be a big thing. And going through the documents that I was forwarded, I don't see any actual engineering in there, for the actual structure of the building, to see if that's up to, taking on this new life. And then the other question I had was, with the elevator, like, because there's no exits at grade, like what the capacity of the elevator is, or if there's a fire, that's the only exit for ADA is via an elevator. At what point does that shut down? And it, I don't know in the fire code what point that needs to shut down in a fire alarm. So that's something to kind of consider too, where you may want to have additional ramps at exits, right? Because typically you have to have so many spaces, so many steps to get out to an exit. I know we run into that all the time on jobs. You have to calculate how many steps it is to get outside. And if you only have one elevator and you have multiple people in wheelchairs, that could be an issue.
Jim, I can't answer all your questions here. I don't.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your comment, and all I can say is that we're going to follow a process that addresses safety. We're going to follow a process that develops or that addresses all the abatement that has to be done, and we're going to have to trust that process. And as we go through it, if you can make some suggestions, that would be appreciated. But right now we are still fairly early on, and we're going to have to trust the process that.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I know in one of the estimates, it said that it didn't have abatement and the other one was an abatement. I don't think it was based on, I don't know if you guys forwarded those documents to the estimators or they just figure a rough square footage. Because I think those numbers that they had were less than what a partial abatement in 2018 was set at. So-
That was determined by, the amount of abatement needed. The original abatement, the 2018 document was done by Plesson and O'Neill. They're highly reputable, highly detailed. We trust that they did it well. I think they were aware that of what we took off. So, for the budget, so, all that, should be,
I mean, if you read through, I mean, they're giving you the abatement.
as we go through this construction documents, as Austin goes through the plans for the safety plans for the building, the facilities people are gonna be involved from the town. So that's the process, and we're gonna have to trust it.
I mean, it seems like a lot to get done by the 28th, right? So,
I don't know if we'll get all that done by the 28th, but we'll get enough information for the board to make a decision by the 28th.
yeah, I think the fear on like that gentleman, myself, and quite a few other people is, there's a lot of potentially expensive unknowns that, nobody wants to address until it's too far down the road. But, I could be wrong on that, so.
Thank you, Jim.
No one else has their hand
Anyone
up.
else? I'm looking at the closed meeting adjournment. Someone move to adjourn, please.
So move.
And second,
Second.
adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night now.
Good night.